Welcome to Barrington Area Conservation Trust's Conservation Conversations video library. My name is Kat Gertz, Administrative Director at BACT, and I am your host for this companion series to our podcast. For more than 20 years, BACT has been stewarding land in the Barrington area. This includes more than 520 acres of land preserved in conservation easements, heritage corridors, and our own nature preserves. We have planted more than 10,000 native plants and shrubs, along with over 100 oak trees, a keystone species. Together with volunteers and students, we've installed over 50 pollinator gardens at schools, businesses, churches, and private homes. One of our favorite initiatives is the Conservation at Home program. Founded by the Conservation Foundation in Naperville, Illinois, Conservation at Home is being implemented throughout Chicagoland to help improve the environmental health of the region. It's easy, and every earth-conscious choice that you make in your home landscape makes a difference. Individual landowners will determine the future of conservation. With so much land privately held, just making one change in each yard has a powerful impact. Changes such as replacing some turf grass with beautiful and drought-resistant native plants, installing a rain barrel, reducing or even eliminating chemical use. So the Illinois state tree is the white oak, the bird is the cardinal, and the insect is the monarch butterfly. Our state prairie grass is big bluestem, but there are not many places where it grows anymore. We have lost almost all of our original prairie lands. Take a drive through a typical neighborhood. It's almost as if the only plants that exist in the world are turf grass, junipers, lilies, and hosta. And yet none of those are native to Illinois. They do little or nothing to support the native ecosystem. They actually require our support to thrive. Okay then, how do you create an attractive and functional yard that conserves water and provides habitat for birds, butterflies, and other beneficial wildlife? BACT can help. Let's explore some of the steps outlined by the Conservation at Home program. Each of these simple changes makes a difference. And if you catch the fever, you can even go all the way to certification and proudly display your very own yard sign. First, the fundamental basic. Plant native plants. Because they belong here, they thrive with minimal intervention, unlike that turf grass lawn. Their extensive root systems break up the soil, filtering water and removing pollutants in the process. Plus, they provide the exact nutrition and habitat for the native creatures that evolved alongside them. Renowned entomologist, ecologist, and conservationist Doug Tallamay's research has shown that a pair of chickadees need to find 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise just one clutch of young. And they find those caterpillars on native plants. Doug Tallamay's books are quite a good read. I do recommend them. Now, by expanding native plant gardens, one result is that you reduce the expanse of lawn, and that's great stuff. Why? Well, lawns are needy. But do you still want to manage your remaining lawn? That's fine. Try natural solutions, such as cornmeal gluten to control weeds and mowing at the highest setting. The native birds and insects attracted by the native plantings will help manage your pests without the need for pesticides. Lawns are hard work and they're expensive, all for minimal ecological value. Reimagining some of that lawn for native plantings makes an enormous impact on your checkbook and day planner, on water and air quality, and for the native creatures. Check out the cost savings you can realize once your native garden is established. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. There is absolutely no reason that you should end up with a messy garden, providing you still carry out those basic gardening tasks such as weeding, pinching, staking, and cutting down plants. Your yard can be a beautiful natural prairie such as our Peterson Preserve, which is pictured here, but it can also be a well-designed piece of eco-art. Start with selecting the right plants. Beyond the amount of light and moisture and soil type, you want to see how tall, how wide, how do they spread. In smaller gardens, you're going to want to avoid rhizomaceous plants that spread underground. Plant for the density that you want, lush and full, or distinctly individual plants. Keep a tidy bed edge where it meets walkways, driveways, and lawn. Seed heads, well, those are up to you. Do you want the plants to reseed themselves, or do you want to control where they go? Do you want to provide birds with winter seed? Do you like the winter interest of dried stalks? You can do a bit of all of the above. Remember that if you don't like where a plant is growing, you can move it or remove it. Another keystone of the Conservation at Home program are oaks. Oaks are a critical part of the Chicago region, a keystone species. That ecosystem has shrunk to 17% of what it was prior to European settlement in the early 1800s. And what remains is fragmented. So let's reconnect those woodland remnants, planted oak, as part of your property stewardship. Check out the terrific resources of the Chicago Region Trees Initiative to learn more about how improving the urban forest can actually benefit people's lives. Better water and air quality, temperature regulation, and improved mood are just a few of these benefits. Not only are the oak woodlands shrinking and disconnecting, which disrupts wilderness corridors, but the oak trees themselves are aging out. Oaks are often not the trees of choice for new development. Thankfully, many municipalities, builders, and landowners are turning to native trees, such as American linden, redbud, and serviceberry, for their beauty and because they will thrive in their native soils if planted and tended properly. But an oak, that's a long-term investment. As a keystone species, it is the foundation of entire living communities. More than 100 U.S. vertebrate species eat their acorns. Species shown here are among those identified by the Illinois State Wildlife Action Plan as critical wildlife species in the northeastern morainal division of Illinois, and can be associated directly with oak ecosystems. How amazing would it be to help these native animals thrive again? Wildlife doesn't randomly occur. It responds to specific habitats that provide food, water, shelter, and space to raise a family. Large-scale habitat preservation alone will not save wildlife, but individual gardeners can create habitat that, when connected with other individual gardens, will make a huge difference. And by the way, insects, often misunderstood. They have tremendous value in every ecosystem. Many of them pollinate plants. They eat other insects, maintaining a healthy balance. They are food for other animals, especially birds. The rule of thumb is, if you don't have bugs in your garden, you're not doing it right. Here's a great example. While we are fortunate to be very spoiled for choice at the grocery today, the grim reality is that without pollinators, such as bees, birds, and butterflies, shopping would be a very different experience. And native plants, they support those very pollinators. Here's another fundamental for conservation at home. We've been invaded. When settlers arrived in America, they brought familiar plants from home with them. But unfortunately, the natural control factors of their home ecosystems do not exist here. And without those inhibitors, many of these plants spread like wildfire. In so doing, they have overrun the native vegetation that does have its ecosystem regulators in place. Removing invasive species is another aspect of land stewardship. Buckthorn is the most detrimental invasive species in the Barrington area. It makes a great privacy hedge, so it was planted along many property boundaries. Well established now, it chokes out everything around it. Garlic mustard is another invasive that you may find in your yard. And teasel can be found along roads and train tracks, since vehicle air draft pulls thousands of seeds along. If you live beside a body of water, you're likely to see your wetlands are being choked by reed canary grass and Phragmites. Each poses its own challenge for removal and control. Settle in for a long battle. They are tenacious. And once again, BACT's Conservation at Home volunteer naturalists can help you identify such invasives on your property, as well as connect you with the resources you need to bring them under control. Are you curious about what percent of trees in each Barrington County are buckthorn? Here are the statistics. Now remember, this plant is from Europe. It did not exist here until the 1800s. And yet, Lake County's tree canopy is more than 50% buckthorn. There are two species of buckthorn found in the Barrington area. They can be identified by their characteristic thorn and orange cambium layer just under the bark. The females produce berries, and they're more detrimental than the males, so if you need to remove them in stages, target the females first to stop the spread. But why is it bad? Buckthorn takes over huge areas of land and robs our natural habitat of biodiversity. It pollutes the soil with a toxic compound called emodin, which prevents native plants from growing. And it steals the sun. Buckthorn is first to leaf in the spring and last to drop leaves in the fall. Native plants just can't compete. And it's not just plants that are affected. That same toxin that inhibits the growth of other plants also harms amphibians. And the birds will eat the seeds, not by choice, but because that's what's available. Basically, it's junk food. Buckthorn does not support native insects, the foundation food for so many native creatures. Here's what you can do instead. Your BACT naturalist can suggest native shrub and tree options that can stand in the place of buckthorn. These will be beautiful, support the ecosystem, and maintain privacy. Look closely, yeah? There's a house back there. That's where the water we drink comes from. When stormwater simply runs off and does not soak into the soil, the aquifers cannot recharge. The well that your water comes from can be affected. Well, recharging means more than just refilling. This process acts as a natural filter. It reduces the harmful water quality impact from rainfall that carries chemicals and pollutants into our storm sewers, retention ponds, and eventually nearby streams and lakes. Landscaped areas planted with native vegetation with deep roots allow the water to gradually filter into the ground, rather than just running off into the storm drains. A visit from a conservation at home naturalist can identify opportunities for your property to improve the Barrington watershed. Check out our podcast, Let's Get Our Feet Wet, to dive into the details of our aquifers. All of our podcast episodes are available in the library tab of our website, bactrust.org. So now you are ready to schedule a BACT Conservation at Home volunteer naturalist to visit your property. Complete the appointment request form on our website to get started. Finally, let's talk about some fun perks about taking your yard to a new level through stewardship and restoration of native ecosystems. When you create a native plant oasis, they will come. Who? The monarchs. By providing the right plants and the right habitat, they will stop at your way station for food, shelter, and to reproduce. Let me share some simple pollinator garden tips from our naturalists. First, a good butterfly garden will have lots of sun. Plants that are good for butterflies tend to be the ones that grow well in full or mostly sun. It takes less energy to collect nectar from plants that are close together, so group plants in clumps and in varying heights. Choose some nectar plants that bloom early, some that bloom later, and some that bloom in between to provide nectar all season long and beauty all season long. Shrubs or fences work well to protect butterflies from the wind. For something as light as a paperclip, it doesn't take much to be blown off course. On a windy day, it's good for butterflies to have a sheltered place to rest. And remember, these plants are there to be eaten. Holes and chewed on leaves are a sign that your garden is a good home to pollinators. If you see signs of snacking, keep your eyes out, butterflies and moths, in the coming weeks. Soil is something that's often overlooked. See if you can get yours tested for the appropriate nutrients, minerals, and composition for the type of garden you're planting. The results may actually affect your plant choices. And consider registering your garden as part of a monarch habitat certification program. Now I want to leave you with some pretty native garden portraits, starting with these sun lovers. Some will be familiar. Milkweed is the monarch garden hero, and some may be new to you. If you have the right location, try some unique plants. In the shade, Virginia bluebell heralds the onset of spring, and wild ginger creates a great ground cover with these unique little blossoms. Bloodroot, well, it simply glows. If you're fortunate to have a wetter area, whether it's just a low spot or it follows along a shore, you have a whole palette of plants that like to have wet feet available to you. Rain gardens and shoreline buffers create a special ecosystem of their own. Thank you for joining us today. Keep up on BACT's activities by following us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter on our website. And listen to our podcast. These episodes are made possible by a grant from the Barrington Area Community Foundation. Thank you.